What is it that mystics experience? How is a mystic's spirituality or spiritual experience different from anyone else's? I think these are important questions to consider. Mysticism is defined as having an experience of union with God or with something that the person considers ultimate. That could be a sense of connection, of union with nature or with energy. And that really differs depending on whether someone comes from a tradition that's deistic or whether they come from an indigenous religion or practice or some other practice. You see, there are many different paths to mysticism. And what's important in mysticism is not the belief system. Instead, mysticism is about the experience. So as I talk about the experience of mysticism today, to try to keep it a little simpler, I'm going to talk about it in relationship to God, the experience of union with God. But I want to be very clear from the beginning that mysticism does not require a belief in God, but it does require a belief in something outside of oneself that's larger than oneself. So as we explore mysticism a little bit further today, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel as well as to click the bell so you're notified of future videos. There are many different paths of mysticism. But what's really striking to me is how mystics from various paths, from various traditions, really share the same kind of experience. And we find in their writings descriptions of something that's so key and so similar. What is that like? What is it that they experience? Well, first, mystics typically nurture their spiritual life through contemplative practices. They engage in meditation or other things that draw them to a sense of quiet. And it's not that sense of quiet, that sense of interiority that's mysticism itself. Instead, mystics understand that this meditation, this contemplative path, is sort of the plow that digs up the soil within oneself, that allows the field to be planted so that something can sprout. So that the mystic's work in the spiritual life is doing that basic spiritual practice, something like meditation, as a way of turning over the soil and preparing it for something to plant and sprout. One of my favorite mystics is from the 16th century, a Spanish woman, Teresa of Avila. And she writes about mysticism in some detail in her book, Interior Castle. She refers to it as the prayer of union. So right there it is. It's about that union with the divine. And Teresa says that, everyone needs to be about their contemplative prayer, their meditation, their time of quiet. But it's in there that something happens. And she understands that there's a moment of grace, a gift, when God allows the divine self to be encountered. And what's that like? Well, she says, you know it when it happens. If it hasn't happened to you, you're not going to understand it when someone tries to put it into words, if they can even put it into words. That's because it's such a unique kind of experience. It's the experience of encountering something larger than oneself and being present and connected. Teresa writes that it's generally an experience that lasts only a few minutes, maybe up to a half hour, but it's fleeting. And you can't program it. You can't make it happen. Instead, you continue to engage in your contemplative practice, and that grace, that opportunity, that gift happens as it will. Meister Eckhart, writing about 200 years before Teresa from Germany, looks at it in a little more systematic way. And I want to spend a little bit of time with a quote from him from one of his sermons. And he begins right off in this sermon by saying, God and I, we are one. So right there, he's talking from a mystic perspective, that's experience of union. And he says that I accept God into me in knowing. Like Teresa, you know it's happening. but I go to God in loving. It's a heart movement. It's that turning over the soil in contemplative prayer. Now, he wants to offer a correction here. There are some who say that blessedness comes not in knowing, but in willing. And they're wrong. What he's saying is, some people say that you can get yourself into this state, that if you will it hard enough, you're going to make it happen. And that's not how it works. If it consisted only in will, it wouldn't be one. It wouldn't be unitive. It would be all about what I'm doing. Instead, he says that working and becoming, that work of contemplative prayer and becoming one with the divine, they're one. So he offers some metaphors. If a carpenter doesn't work, nothing becomes of the house. If the axe isn't doing anything, nothing becomes of anything. And he goes on to say that it's in this working together, that God and I are one. God is working and I am becoming. So a lot like Teresa, God's giving the grace and it's impacting me. Eckhart says God is working and I am becoming. And then the metaphor that I think is most helpful. Fire changes everything into itself that is put into it. And it takes on God's own nature. Takes on fire's own nature. Let me repeat that. Fire changes anything into itself that's put into it and takes on fire's own nature. The wood doesn't change fire into itself, but the fire changes wood into itself. And in this metaphor, Eckhart understands that the fire is the divine presence and we are the wood. And when we're put into the fire, the wood becomes fire. That's the union that happens. It's a transformation. That transformation, the experience of the transformation, is the heart of the writing of Sufi poet Hafiz from the 14th century, a Persian. And Hafiz is, again, one of my favorite spiritual writers. And Hafiz uses beautiful language to talk about his experience of mysticism and this transformation. He understands that Allah is his beloved, that the relationship between he and Allah is one of pure love, and that love is transformative. And because of that transformative love, he experiences that the stars at night and the moon are dancing, and then the animals and the birds and everything in nature are radiating that love. And that human life itself, it's like going on a Saturday night to the tavern where everybody's drinking and singing and full of life, and it's embodied. And he sees this dynamism, this ecstatic experience that happens because of this union with God. And that there's a deep longing in Hafiz and in his writing to experience this more and more in each moment. The experience of mysticism changes our life, and it happens as a grace in a moment, as a gift. We can't program it, but we can open our hearts to it through regular contemplative practice by preparing ourselves to be open, not relying on a particular belief system, but opening our heart to love and to experience something more and rich and deep. And it's in that we enter the unit of experience. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, like the video, share it with others, leave me some comments, and know that I appreciate the time you spend with Spirituality Beyond Borders. Have a great day.